This is Stephen Kotler, and you're listening to Your Superior Self.
Hi, I'm Anita Murjani, and this is Your Superior Self.
This is Christina Rasmussen, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, Cultural Creatives. I'm Bruce Lipton, and I'm here to join you with Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Paul Selig, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
What is up, beautiful beings? What is going on? Hope you guys are having an amazing day. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for taking the time to hang out. And if this is your first time listening, make sure to hit subscribe. Leave a rating and a review. It helps me scale the podcast and get this out to those who may need it the most. And for those who are returning and who are a part of this community of curiosity and finding answers from higher consciousness, I'm excited to tell you that I have a pretty interesting guest. Alan Steinfeld, the host of the hit YouTube series New Realities, joins the show. He's been doing this for like 30 years. He has been paving the way for people like myself to, I guess, ask better questions, to find better answers, to really feel okay about doing things differently, not going with the flow, but kind of making our own paths, searching for our own truths. He gives us permission to do that. And I tell you what, he's a hell of a host. I mean, he literally turns the tables on me a couple times in this episode and really puts the pressure on me to answer some of the tough questions. But I like it. I like that. It's the first time that's really even happened to me, where a guest has asked me some tough questions, and I like it because it helps me find my truth, what my truth really is, and hone in on that. I'm listening to this, pre-listening to the episode, just, trying to find a clip for you guys. And I'm just like, wow, like this is what it's about. Helping each other grow, helping each other kind of get rid of all that noise and all that distraction and kind of hone in on what the true message is. And I feel like that's what he's doing in this entire episode for me. It's getting rid of all that noise, getting rid of all that distraction, and really tune into that inner voice that has been guiding you for your entire life, but for circumstances unknown to us during that time, we're not listening to it. We're so confused about what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to accomplish. We're so distracted by the noise, the outside noise, that we can never really hear it. And here's actually a fun clip of Alan just getting in my ass, trying to make me understand that I am doing the thing that I set out to do. It's just you get so distracted with goals, and you get so distracted with the ego that you kind of lose sight of that. You start focusing on the wrong things. And you take a step back and you need to be in the moment. And this is why I love this clip.
It's not about wanting to do it. It's like, you're driving a great car and you're saying, I want a great car. It's like, hello. So just be present with hey, give yourself that little piece. You say, I want to do this and I'm actually doing it. It's like if you give yourself the satisfaction of having accomplished that, it gives you more room, because then you're not chasing that level of the dream. It gives room for the bigger picture of the dream to come. So give yourself what you already have. It's just take it.
I love this. Alan coming in here and just take it over. I love it.
No, but I am just reflecting on what you're saying. And that's, for me, this is always my interest, to try to understand people and try to, I'm just talking to myself over there. I really am. It's like, I know exactly, well, maybe not exactly what you're saying, but I can relate to it because I've been there. I'm still there in some level. I want this, I want that. And it's like,
well, what do you want now? Like, what is it that you want? Oh man, I love every second of that. And what you're going to love more is this new book coming out titled Making Contact, which is phenomenal. It has so many great co-authors in this book. Whitley Strieber, Johnny Mack, Daryl Anka, Nick Pope, Grant Cameron, Caroline Corey, and so many more. And they talk about, well, they present multiple perspectives on a fact that can no longer be denied. UFOs and their occupants are visiting our planet. And the government's acknowledgement in 2017 still leaves us with unanswered questions as to who, what, and why. So this is what Alan's doing. He is putting material out like this, content out like this, that reaches so many people. And it forces us to ask better questions. And that's what we're doing today. We're asking each other better questions. What is it? What is our reality? What is it that we're here to do? What is consciousness? How do we obtain higher levels of information? How do we know ourselves? How do we know thyself? All of that is in this episode. But before we get into it, I need you to go over to abandonedchildrensfund.org, and I need you to research their organization because they're doing great work. They're providing children in underprivileged countries, children that are abandoned in war zones, shelter, food, love, and education. They're doing great works. I need you to head over there, research them, give if you can, share their content, make sure that people are becoming more aware of their mission. And then head over to traydowns.com, leave me a message, let me know your thoughts on today's episode and what you guys are doing right now in this moment to further your development. How are you furthering your development here, right now, in this moment? What kind of people are you surrounding yourself with? What kind of content are you reading? Are you asking the right questions? Are you scared to ask the questions? Because I was scared to ask questions because I was tied down by dogma. But as you grow as an individual and as an individual consciousness, personality, you ask yourself, why am I here? So I want to know those questions. I want to know those answers. I want to know my own answers, but I want to know your answers too. Yeah, so here we go. Without further ado, here is my conversation with the great and powerful Alan Steinfeld.
This is Alan Steinfeld, and this is Your Superior Self.
This is like one of those epic moments where I have the guy who paved the way for all of us podcasters and people who are interested in consciousness. Like, I've watched so many of your interviews with like stellar guests, and now I'm having a conversation with the guy who started it 30 years ago. Thank you for taking the time.
Well, it's not even taking the time. This is what I do. This is what I love to talk about. This is the kind of world we are welcome each other into. So it's fun for me. Thank you.
I'm very curious. Like, how did this start for you, Alan? Like, when did you get the idea that you wanted to start a show, and how did that come about?
Well, that's a really good question. You know, I have to say, to really be honest, I grew up watching Johnny Carson. He was my mentor every night, watching him, but he was going for the comedy. I thought, well, it's not just about making people laugh. There's actually needs to be a conversation. And then I watched Dick Cavett, who was a little more intelligent, and then Bill Moyers. Bill Moyers, like, wow, that is deep. So I like those, like the conversation with Joseph Campbell. That was if anyone who's seen that, that's life changing. So I love the kind of exchange. I love learning. So tell me what I don't know. This has been my quest. So with Johnny Carson, yeah, like, let's get the laugh. And sometimes I go for that too. But with my interviews, I want to learn as much as I can about the nature of existence and whatever reality is and whatever that means. And I got deeper into what do we mean by perception, reality, cognition. So these are the things that took me deeper. And then also having my own experiences. So without my own personal out-of-body experiences, my own dream states of meeting other beings, of even I in the book, I talk about this encounter I had. So all that informed my search that there was more to this reality. And reading the mystical literatures, you know, like you have to read the Tao Te Ching and Be Here Now and Carlos Castaneda. Do you know who Carlos Castaneda is? That set the groundwork for everything I was to do and explore, and also meeting a teacher. I met a teacher who met all my needs. I was like, in the early 80s, everyone was looking for gurus. And I said, I don't want a guru. I don't want anyone I have to follow or wear their picture or wear orange robes. I never look good in orange anyway. So it's true. So someone told me about this woman from Seattle who would go into a trance, and this 35,000-year-old warrior would come through her and give these great teachings. I thought this woman was either crazy or faking it, or there was a slim possibility that maybe this could be true. But I just had graduated from college, and I was coming from quite a psychological perspective that everything was a manifestation of the mind. And I have to say, from this point of view, psychology has done us a great service in understanding ourselves, but it's done us a great disservice in distrusting our own mind. And that's the battle we're still facing in consciousness. So I went to see this woman channel, Ramtha the Enlightened One, and Ramtha calls on me in the audience. She goes into a trance. Her body expands and blows up and swells up. And I'm in the audience, and Ramtha calls on me, and he says, "What say you, beloved entity? How be you this day in your time?" And it was like a voice beyond space and time that was talking to me. And I sort of had, like, I would say, a psychedelic experience almost, where I felt like I was coming out of my body. There's something that I was initiated into. And I knew at that moment that the I who I am, was greater than my body. And when you know that, you start to identify with consciousness more than you do with the body. I mean, we have a great body. We want to take care of it. We want to nurture it. But who we are is not just the body. So what is that thing? And one thing Ramtha said, have you heard of Ramtha?
Yeah. Jay-Z Knight. Yep.
Jay-Z Knight. Yeah. So Jay-Z Knight in 1981, that sort of switched things on. Ramtha said the big mystery here is not what's being channeled through this woman, Jay-Z Knight's body. The bigger mystery is who's coming through that body, your body, right there, Trey. Who is that? Where's your voice come from? Where's that mind come from? Where do those questions come from? There's no answer, because we are part of the mystery. So the mystery is not just out there. It's right in here. And that was an awakening, that realization.
Oh, man, I love all of that. So did you ever get to have like a personal relationship with Jay-Z Knight?
Actually, it's funny. I spent years in her audience and like waiting, and then just recently I was in front of the audience giving a talk at Contact in the Desert, and there's this woman waving at me from the front row. I said, "Who is that?" And I came over to her, and it was Jay-Z Knight. I was a student for 20 years in her audience, and then it's like she was a student in my audience, or a person. It's like, wow, that was a full circle.
Yeah.
I knew Jay-Z. I wasn't that close to her. There were a lot of people more inside the inner circle, but that teaching influenced everything. Even the whole idea about new realities, which is what I call my YouTube channel, came from a baseline. And other people were there too, like Joe Dispenza. His initial spiritual teaching was right from there. Have you interviewed Joe?
No, not yet. I've been trying.
There's a lot. I mean, Joe's gone in his own direction, but there was
he started from the White Book of Ramtha, right? Like, I mean, I remember in his earlier books, he talks about Ramtha, and that's what like started him giving him the idea of like self-healing.
Well, yeah, he was in the Ramtha school. I don't know how long, maybe 10, 15 years. He was a teacher. He was a great teacher. Everything he's doing now in front of the audiences with human potential, he started there. Of course, he's evolved it. But yeah, that was the foundation. I knew him there. I mean, he did very well as a student. We used to be in these giant mazes, blindfold. You have to get into the center just by holding your focus. Joe was always pretty good at that, I have to say. So Joe went for it, and he was dedicated until, I think it was sort of whatever happened, but Ramtha put him in the world, but on his own to carry on the teachings, because it doesn't matter who says this, Ramtha would always say, if you have to call it Ramtha, then you've missed the message here. Sure. So I'm carrying it on, and not that, but the eternal message, the perennial philosophy that Aldous Huxley would call it. There's something about the eternal presence of human consciousness that has been the driving force through all the ages. It's been the thing in mystery schools, ancient mystery schools, the ancient initiates. Maybe you were an old initiate and forgot who you were in this lifetime, and now you're realizing. So the initiate is on the path to awakening to the full consciousness of who they are. And when they do that, you sort of get off the wheel of incarnation. You've owned the human experience. I'm sort of fast tracking the whole thing, but you own the human experience, which means you felt everything there is to feel in the incarnation of this density of a body. And when you do that, you start to enlighten the cells. You start to vibrate at a quicker rate and you start to ascend. That's the ascension process a lot of people talk about, but it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of looking at all your junk, all your dark side, all your negative attitudes, the whole programming. And, UFOs, ETs can wake you up to some of that, but they're not going to do it for us. It's another level of what we're calling consciousness. Like I talked to Deepak Chopra. He's become a good friend. Every time he has a new book, he asks me, "Oh, you want to interview me about my new book?" I said, "Sure." But I tried to explain. I mean, he didn't get the UFO ET aspect because he says what's here is everywhere and what's not here is nowhere. Yeah, consciousness is all there is, right? I mean, it doesn't matter if you're an ET or some guy down the street, some homeless guy or some billionaire. It's all consciousness. But I said to Deepak, with the ET phenomena coming forward, it's an expansion of what we know into the unknown. It doesn't change the field of consciousness, but it makes this experience much more interesting in a way. It broadens the possibility of who we are and what we can interact with.
Our potential, right? Like, I mean, like you said, the unknown, like it fires me up because it's like, what is out there? Like, what is it? Right. Like, and you talk about, like, I love Making Contact. I think it's a great, it's well written. It's easy read.
Yeah.
And I love the people that you have in here. But your story particularly caught my eye because it's like, it's kind of like everyone's story where you get curious, but sometimes your conditioning stops at when you're growing up, that programming from your families. Talk about that, like growing up, like your curiosity started early, right? Like, I mean,
but children are always curious. Look at a newborn baby. They're always grabbing and touching and running. We're all born curious. And I think my parents were a little more artistically inclined. I mean, they were pretty straight laced, middle America, suburbia. My father worked hard in the industrial boom. He was in the construction world. So, he grew up in the Depression and he just wanted to make money, not to be rich, just so he wouldn't be poor. That was the mindset, that kind of workaholic mindset, which sort of killed him in a way. He was in a toxic environment. I think eventually it kind of caught up with him, steel paint and lead welding fumes. But no one knew about environmental toxins at that time. All they knew was this is the 60s. This is like a boom in industry and buildings and science. So he left Brooklyn, got married. My mother was a stay-at-home regular mother. She did have a little artistic impulse. I mean, she was a great interior decorator. Every year our living room would be remodeled in colonial, at Oriental. Every year there was a different French Renaissance. Every year there was a kind of different scheme. But that kind of saved me a little because there was an appreciation of a creative imagination. So I think if you don't have that and you're told, just go to school, just get a job, get a family, do the same thing. It's what Ramtha would call recycled ignorance. So I didn't want to live on Long Island with a house and a bunch of kids and do all that because I had done that growing up. I had owned that experience. So I was looking for something different. So I after college, I went to the city, and it was in the early 80s. It was avant-garde arama. There everyone was dressing up. It was the punk scene. It was like new wave music and arts, and there were galleries everywhere in the East Village. So got into that kind of and I lived in a really cheap apartment. So, I had this roommate from college. I think we paid $90 a month each.
Oh,
So every day was an adventure. Go out on the street and say, what can I discover today? And I was a photographer. I took a lot of pictures, took a lot of video from that time. I have a video on YouTube called A Walking Tour of the East Village from the mid 80s with characters like Allen Ginsberg showing up there and all the whole downtown scene. And so I kept looking for more possibilities, and the arts could only get you so far until I got into this whole spiritual thing. And that was even more avant-garde than anything that was happening in the New York art scene. There were in the art scene, there were men dressing up as women, the whole transvestite thing, but there were then Jay-Z Knight, who was not dressing up as a man. She was becoming an Atlantean warrior, if whatever that means. But that was much more avant-garde. So it's like, wow. So I also figured, and when you go through that doorway into kind of the mystic, I thought, well, if there's something here, it will, lead to other things. And if there's nothing here, as you open up to those mystical realms, then it'll be an empty experience. So I went to that first Ramtha day, what they call dialogues, with possibility this is pure garbage, or maybe there's something there. And there was something there. And once you go through that door, it kind of shuts behind you. And it's like,
sure.
you can't go back to the old way. So growing up, I did have a curiosity for everything, and I loved school. A lot of people hated school. I loved going to school. I loved learning, and I was with all my friends. And what could be a better environment than that? Learning and being with all your good friends. So yeah, I know a lot of people think it's programming, and it is on some level, but for me, it satisfied the curiosity. And I would read all these science fiction books. And there's an episode in my story where my 6th grade teacher said, you can't read any more science fiction books, because he thought, little did that ignorant person that he was, I guess I'm still angry about it from 6th grade, but did he know that science fiction a kind of subject was so mind expanding that and so it didn't stop me. I was always interested in somehow in consciousness and exploration and how come no one ever told me what the stars were about?
I know.
Right?
I know.
And even now, when I walk out, I'm in Sedona now, when I walk out into the sky at a starry night, it's like I am filled with wonder. Those lights are other worlds. How could they not be other worlds? I mean, right? What's the big secret that the government is hiding, that we're not alone in the universe? Why is that something we have to keep digging and digging? It doesn't make any sense.
Sure.
I mean,
well, talk about your experience, right? Like, because that really hooked me. Like when you were talking about, you had a trip that you went to Arizona, and then you were like, you had an experience where you had marks on your legs. Like, talk about that.
Well, that's just, I mean, I wasn't any different than a lot of people having what they call abduction experiences, but I was driving cross country with this great, beautiful woman I had met in Sedona. We were driving back east. We stopped by this rest stop and overnight, because we're tired of driving, and we felt like we were frozen in the middle of the night. Like, I mean, we woke up in the same position we went to bed in, and who even remembers that? I mean, that's not even something you're conscious of, that, but somehow we both had that feeling. We both felt a little weird when we woke up. We just had to get out of that location. And then a day or two later, I'm back in New York, and my mother, who I think is part of the lineage of people who've had those experiences, even though she'll never admit it, she said, "What's that in the back of your leg there?" And it was this 4-pronged puncture mark. It was like 4 in a square. And I could just visualize. I think it was the back of my right knee, maybe. For some reason, I didn't take a picture of it. I mean, iPhones weren't around. So it's like, I said, that's weird. But eventually I met Bud Hopkins. You know who Bud Hopkins is?
No.
He's like the godfather of the alien abduction. He wrote a book called Missing Time, where he talked to he didn't actually name the alien abduction. There were people talking about that, like Betty and Barney Hill in the 1960s. But what Bud did was put together certain patterns that were common to all the abduction experiences, like seeing these little beings with the big eyes, being traumatized. A lot of people are traumatized. And I talk about why I didn't remember it, because there was a level of, just imagine you're sleeping, and it happens in people's houses too.
Sure.
The doors are locked and suddenly there's a being at the foot of the bed. I mean, even if they're not scary looking beings, someone's going to be freaked out, because that just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So I sort of blocked a lot of that experience out. And I'm still searching to uncover it, but I did meet Bud Hopkins, who had something called the Intruders Foundation. He said, and his group said, yeah, that's a typical abduction, and people do feel frozen in the middle of the night. And I called this woman up and said, do you think that may have happened to us? And then she was regressed. And it took me 20 years to actually be regressed to that time, because I was not ready to face those beings. I also have to say, it's not traumatic for everyone. In the book, in the last 3 chapters, so I divide the book into investigators, people just looking at the hardcore evidence and what the government's telling us and what they're not telling. Then I go into the researchers, people like Linda Moulton Howe and John Mack, who are talking to other people about their experiences. And then I look at the abductees, it's really the third part of the book is experiences. And I divide experiences into 2 categories: abductees who've had the trauma, and then contactees who say, oh no, they're all beings of light. It's all love. It's all happiness. So it's all, and that wasn't my experience, although it was not my experience. Abductees, after they process their event, they see that it was really an evolutionary aspect. So abductees can become contactees. I mean, Whitley Strieber, if you know who he is, he wrote the book. Whitley is probably the most well-known abductee. He's the guy who started the whole thing about rectal probes and all that.
Wow.
That came from Whitley's book Communion, where Communion's the book for you, Trey. Really, that's a book where a lot of people said, oh my God, I think I remember something. And that's a book that turned me on too. I mean, my copy of the book, like every page is underlined in there. So, and Whitley's
you need to talk to Dan Aykroyd's a big.
Oh yeah, I'd like to get Dan my book. Do you know him?
No, I don't know him.
Maybe
you got the big show. I mean, I'm trying to be like you.
I know I do have a good show, and you will be like me once you open your mind to everything that's possible. I think you're getting there, right?
Yeah, I'm getting there. I'm definitely getting there.
What's in the way for you?
Just limiting beliefs. You know what I mean? Like
what beliefs? I don't mean to turn the tables on you.
You're good, dude. I love this. Actually, I feel like I'm on new realities right now.
Yeah, exactly. What are your limiting of beliefs? I want to know what you think
I can't achieve that. You know, like I can't achieve like what you have. You know,
what you can achieve. I think I can achieve what what other people have. It's always like Gulliver's Travel. It's always like you're always in. But what do you mean? Why do you think you're already achieved? When I look at you in your studio, for me, you've already achieved it.
Sure. I guess it's more or less like, I don't know. It's just like, I want to be that voice for the younger generation coming up that helps more people like you. You want to help people awaken, right? New realities for people. Right. I want to be that voice for people, and I don't come from an egoic motivation.
No, but why do you think you're not that voice? I mean, that's
just because my background, it's always going to be that who am I, right? Like
no, that's the lie right there that you tell yourself. You have to. And who helped me with this is Ram Dass. When I interviewed Ram Dass for the first time, I said, wow, Ram Dass, you've been around, so everybody knows you. I don't feel like I'm worthy to actually sit down with you. He said to me, get over it. You're here with me. You got it. Go for it. I mean, that helped me. It's like, yeah, I'm sitting in this room with Ram Dass. I must have, done something.
I'm a big fan of Ram Dass. I love Ram Dass.
Ram Dass was the sage of our times. I mean, he he was an incredible speaker. Just even after he was sick and had a stroke and everything, he was able to communicate on a level that many people don't get to, a depth of honesty and his own insecurities he was able to talk about.
I just read his newest book that came out. I think it was Being Ram Dass. It's like 18. I listened to the Audible version. It's like 18 hours long, but man, you talk about bravery, like putting everything out there in a book, like just fantastic. It just, his material resonates because like he says it in his book where people were looking at him like he was this higher, like you explained, right? That he was untouchable. And he was just, the way that he portrays himself in his stories and in his books is like, I'm just like you. I struggle with this shit, like I struggle with the everyday ego and, this and that. Like I am not better than you at all. And that's why I just, like. That's
what I'm saying to you right there. No one's better or worse than you. You have what it takes. Look, you're doing it. You have an expensive microphone. You're talking. You have headphones. No, I'm serious. Stop talking to yourself with an old voice. That is like, it's not you, really. It's like who you are is so much bigger than who you think you are. Truly, you got to know that this voice, this monkey mind, it's not real. It isn't. You just are beginning to know who you are and is infinite. So we have to all grow each other up together. Like, we all feel like Ram Dass felt, or I feel like I look at you, we're the same. Like you have a show, I have a show. I just maybe talk to more people, but you're just as curious. And
you're best friends with Deepak. I mean,
well, he has been very, I wouldn't say I'm best friends, but he has been very nice to me. He gave me a blurb for my book. And
that's awesome. I mean, that's intense. I mean,
I have to say Deepak is very humble. I took a subway with him. I said, Deepak, aren't you afraid people are going to come up to you on the subway? And he goes, let him come up, to him. And so, I mean, really, he said that. So, we're all the same.
So you're like, you helped Paul Selig too. I mean,
actually, I got Paul Selig out of his apartment. I said, Paul,
I love Paul Selig.
I knew because I was brought up with Ramtha. I knew what good channeling was, and I've seen a lot of awful channeling where people were not channeling anything except their ego self and with some strange voice. So because channeling actually activated me, I wanted to check out every channel I could. So when I found a great channel like Ramtha and Ramtha started, but like Paul Selig, I said, Paul, you are up there with the best. And he goes, really? What do you, I mean, I'm just opening my mouth. Words are coming out. So I produced his first out of his apartment workshop. He used to have these weekly meetings in his apartment. And I knew that he had something because it wasn't Paul. I said, Paul, there's something big happening here. He says, well, he used to say in those early evenings, well, if I open my mouth and nothing comes out, I'll buy everyone pizza, because he didn't believe in himself enough. Of course, he's at a different stage now. And I really think there's only a few really great channels of our day. Jane Roberts with Seth, Edgar Casey, Daryl Anka with Bashar, Abraham Hicks.
What are your thoughts on that?
I hate to be judgmental, but in my mind, it's okay. Yeah. It's okay.
How can you tell that like they're channeling from heart? I mean, I get it. You can feel that energetic, but is that it? Yeah. Like, is there other clues?
For me, it's only personal. This is just my judgment. I'm talking about judgment.
Sure.
I did feel an energy with Paul Selig. When I opened his book and read it all the way through, there was a vibration, and I feel something. It's a feeling sense. So a lot of people can say they're the great channels of today, but if I'm not feeling it, then it doesn't matter. So I'm sitting next to Daryl Anka channeling Bashar, and I said to Bashar, wow, there's a great energy coming through here. Can you raise that vibration a little bit? because I'm feeling this buzzing. And Daryl and Bashar says to me, no, we'll blow out the body. We can't do it. So I don't know. It's like, it's all controlled folly. This is what Castaneda says. It's like everything is serious, but it's also folly. It's also, don't take any of it seriously. Of course, there's great teaching. I'm not saying don't take that seriously, but be the observer of the reality. And I still get, starstruck. Like where was I recently? And there was someone there I was talking to. It's like, wow, I'm in the room with like, David Lynch or somebody like that. And it's like, so
well, how do you prepare yourself for like guests like that, right? Like Joe Dispenza or,
well,
Paul
Joe,
Selig.
I knew his ex-wife. I knew his kids. It's like Joe, I wouldn't say I grew up with him, but I knew him for 20 years. But how do I prepare for like someone big? Like,
yeah.
I don't know who have I interviewed that's really big. I don't know. There must be someone, but
Everybody.
I just drop into myself. And what do I want to know? I mean, the best interviewers, and I don't always do it, share a little piece of themselves, just like you did there. Like, oh, I want to know how, and then you ask the question, and then the response comes from a deeper place in the person you're interviewing. So you have to share. You have to give them something, give your audience and reveal a little bit of your vulnerability, but not too much. So it's not ego, but just like you want to know from a depth of your own soul. And then they answer from that depth because there only is soul.
Sure. That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
Being authentic, right? Like I'm not afraid to be authentic. Like for me, like I just love connecting with my guests. Like I love being on a, like you said, on a soul level, like heart to heart, you and I, Alan, just sitting there having a conversation, like, and just connecting about our experiences, with Paul Selig. That's the first time when I went to one of his live workshops, that's the first time I ever felt that heart vibration ever in my life. Like I didn't know what that was. I've heard of it, right? But I've never felt that for myself. I was sitting there with my wife and we were doing an activity together, and I look at her and I'm like, my heart is getting ready to jump out of my chest. I don't know what that is. And his book Alchemy is when he talks about the Christ, the second coming of Christ isn't a physical person coming. It's going to be the opening of your heart. Like that, just like I dropped the book and I was like, man, it makes so much sense. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. No, this is it. You're right. You're on the path. Trey, you're on the path. It makes so much sense because that's the reality.
And you had something to do with that. You got Paul Selig out of his apartment. Now he's over in Maui.
I know. Actually, no, I think, I think there's more, of course, I want to do, I can do. And my next book is going to be even more impactful from this. This just got me on the road, but we're here to serve each other in the form of our highest excitement. This is Bashar saying, you've heard Bashar, right?
Yeah,
so he says, the key to everything, evolution, consciousness, ETs, is to follow your highest excitement. And that's what I've done. Like I said, I would leave my apartment. We didn't have to work much to make money to pay for our apartment. And we would just be caught up in the flow of New York in the 1980s. And it's like, there were so many interesting people. You run into Andy Warhol on the street, or these painters, or, these Keith Haring. Do you know who Keith Haring is?
Mm-hmm.
So there he was, like on the subway drawing these chalk drawings. And he didn't say to me there, but he said to me at some party, take a picture of me. I'm going to be famous. And I said, you're not going to be famous. You're just drawing on the subway. So it shows you what I knew. I mean, now those subway drawings are like, what, $10 million?
Sure.
So, of course, I even should have brought real estate, but it's like you're in the flow and it's just like there, and who's thinking of these other levels. But the spiritual community that I tapped into, and people like Paul Selig and Jay-Z Knight, and the UFO community, which is really at its core spiritual, because it's not so much about ETs out there. It's how, like, I think that's the subtext of my book. How does it make us more human? How does it expand our ability to think outside the box? How does it wake us up to the greater mind, the mind at large, as Aldous Huxley would say? There's something about these other beings They're not just visitors. This is one of the famous sayings of Jacques Vallée. If he said, and that Jacques Vallée was like portrayed as the French guy in the Close Encounters movie. Anyway, he's been in this field for a long time, since the 60s. And he says, if we just find out these are visitors from another planet, I'm going to be very disappointed. Because there's all this paranormal element, there's all this synchronicity, there's all this like telepathic stuff that happens with the UFO phenomenon. There's so much more to it than just, hey, we have company.
Yeah, that would suck if it just from another planet. That's it.
It wouldn't make sense because people have had very strange experiences. I mean, my experience, I need to go back into it and really discover more to that. And it's freaky, you know, we block trauma out because it's upsetting for our world. But then, of course, I was sucked down the rabbit hole at the very same time. Like I wanted to know everything there was about the UFO ET phenomena. So that's another reason how I got to be popular. I went to every single conference. I got to know the leading people in the field. Linda Moulton Howe, I could say, is a good friend. Whitley is a good friend. Daryl's a great guy. I brought him to New York 3 times to channel Bashar. All those people in the book, I have a personal relationship with. Even John Mack, who's no longer with us. Yeah, no, I knew John Mack in the 90s and not very well, but I would go, maybe we, all go out for dinner. I think I even did an interview with him someplace, but do you know who John Mack is?
Yeah. Have you ever like, so where I'm at right now, like it's like, I can see myself, like you and I, like you're just a step in front of me, right? Like you're just down that path. Have you ever so I'm very much into like intuition, like trying to channel my higher self. Like, have you tried that for yourself and achieved that? Like, do you feel like you're channeling that?
All the time. We are always, when we get out of that, those things you were talking about, that not believing, that monkey mind, when you can let go of that kind of inner voice that's telling you you're not good, then you are channeling, then you are in touch with your spirit. Then everything that comes out of your mouth is inspiration somehow. Yeah, there's still habits and patterns, and you need good reflectors to say, oh, that pattern that you do with your mouth or your lips, or that things you said, that's your unconsciousness. So I had another great teacher, Paul Lowe, who was really a tough teacher. He would say, everything out of your mouth is just garbage. It's all, I said, Paul, come on. I thought I was your friend, but he said, no, think about, with not the monkey mind, but be conscious of everything you do and everything you say. Like we'd go out to a restaurant, me and a bunch of people, and he'd say, do you see how you talk to that waiter? Unconscious, 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 all the places. So I'm still unconscious in many ways. But that was intense training. And he did it not to be critical, but to point out my patterns and help me see where I was, because we all develop patterns because we need to survive. And if we could be a little more aware of our patterns of doing everything, of our patterns of thinking, then we get to be more conscious and more alive and more aware.
Oh, man, that's beautiful right there, dude. Talk about your out of body experiences, because like when you said that, like I just kind of like really, because I've been trying to, right? Like so Robert Monroe, he talks about hemisync, right? I don't know if you ever went and experienced any of that, but I'm getting there to the point where I think I'm having breakthroughs. What did your out of body experiences look like?
Well, the first thing you have to do is become more lucid in your dreams. That means, and I learned this from the Australian Aborigines that I kind of stayed with for a little while in Australia. They said to me, you have to notice when you're going into dream time. So you're laying in bed, you're sort of tired, but you're watching your body fall asleep. So and this happens to me, it's happened to me more where I actually wake myself up because I hear myself snoring because I'm not actually in the body. I'm sort of detached. So as you go into this lucid state and the dream images start to come to you, that means the images beyond the ordinary awareness, like there's a movie that starts to unfold in the mind that shows you when you're lucid. lucid dreaming.
Mhm.
You're become the watcher. You're not the thinker anymore. You're the watcher. And when you're in that lucid state, you can start to feel yourself at times. You can will yourself to sort of lift up off the body. And it doesn't happen all the time, but when I'm in lucid state and when I'm get over the fear, because sometimes I find myself out of my body, it's like, oh my God, how did I get here? How do I get back? But there's always a connection to the body. So you start to just get the sense of like lifting off. And some people say they go out of their third eye or whatever, but it's a practice. So in that lucid state where you're watching the dream and you notice that your body is sleeping, then you're in an altered state and you just gently lift up and you start to like feel less dense. And then when you're really practiced, and I've only done this one or maybe more, you can start to go through the walls or the ceiling. But I've never seen anybody there. It's a practice. It is a constant practice. And some people become quite masterful at lucid dreaming. But then when you lucid dream, you're actually building your body, your double, what the Taoists call the etheric body or the rainbow body or the light body. So when you can really build that up through lucid awareness, then you can actually jump, this is what the Toltecs say, into your immortal body. You really build your dreaming body. It becomes more physicalized. And I mean, that's way out there, and I'm definitely not at that level yet, but most of the time I'm just tired. I've been at it all day and I just want to go to sleep. But when I'm not quite that tired and I can watch myself, then the outer body and the hemisync helps because it generates those kind of lucid awareness by keeping your mind awake and your body asleep. So hemisync, I think, is really good.
I noticed that because I was
Yeah.
just it was like this weekend I was laying there listening to Hemi Sync, and I noticed myself like open mouth snoring a little bit, and I was like, but I'm not asleep. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly. That's the start. You're that if you could start to take that state of consciousness, then you can really lift up and you'll be aware of the body and you'll notice you're not asleep. Exactly.
it was so weird.
So
I was like, open mouth, like
it's weird, but don't freak out. Right. That's the beginning step. Absolutely. That's the first plateau.
Have you ever interviewed Thomas Campbell?
Yeah, I did interview him. I liked him. I wasn't quite aware of his work when I interview him. I know he has the theory of everything, but I am going to get him on my ET roundtable that I do. So,
oh my God, I'm going to watch that. Or
yeah, definitely watch that. I do an ET roundtable every week, and I do a channeling roundtable because there's always some great channels. I'm like a talent scout. I'm looking to see who's the next great channel. Okay.
Christina Rasmussen. Have you ever heard of her?
Yes. Is she the Oracle? Is she who is she?
No, she wrote a book about going to the temple world. Like she had lost her husband, her first husband, and she was trying so hard to connect with him. And then she goes through this meditative state and goes through the other side and was able to contact. It's a beautiful story, but I think you two would have an amazing conversation. I mean, do your research or whatever.
No, I've heard of her. She wrote a book, and my PR person, it was her PR person. So I think I did, but for some reason, yeah. Thank you. No, give me some other key hints because I'm always looking for
talent search, man. Talent.
Yeah, I'm a talent search because I think what these people have to say can really help uplift the rest of the world. Like Whitley Strieber, I think you should do he is the most, I talk about lucid awareness. Whitley has it because that's the other key. You need to be lucid in these altered states when you meet the ETs because their conscious field is so vast that it kind of distorts our human field. It's like if you ever been around like Dalai Lama or Amma, it's like their presence is kind of shifts consciousness. Well, the same is true of these ETs.
Have you ever been around the Dalai Lama?
I've met the Dalai Lama twice. I met him. He was coming out of some secret meeting and I was there on the sidewalk in New York and he looks at me. I had my camera, but I had run out of film. So I had my camera and he's just looking there. So like, are you going to take a picture? And it's like, no, we just had that moment where we looked at each other, which was better than the picture. Cause like, wow, that just really stayed with
That's
me.
amazing. The Dalai Lama, like the guy that reincarnates and knows that he reincarnates. Like
We all
I
reincarnate.
know that, but to know to be conscious of that, right? To
Well,
be like, you know,
you should do a past life regression. Do you want to be conscious?
yes.
Well, there's lots of people that do past
Yeah, I
life.
got to do that. So how many, like, so you talked about you did a regression, right?
Yeah,
It took you 20 years to do the regression back into the to
Yes.
the incident.
That abduction. Yes.
Yeah. What, so you talk about that in the book.
Yes.
What about other past lives? Well, like what did you experience? Did you just experience that with the abduction, or did you experience any other past lives?
Well, not in that. Well, the abduction wasn't a past life necessarily. That happened in this life in an altered
Yeah,
state.
yeah, yeah.
Right. But I did do, I would have these nightmares for a long time growing up of being chased down long hallways. Maybe that was an ET thing, but I could never watch films about the Holocaust, Nazi Germany and all that. So I had some feeling. And then I went to this past life regressionist. And I don't know if when you do these regressions, it's like you're not remembering it from the part that says, oh, I know what I did yesterday or this morning. That's memory. There's another awareness, but it doesn't feel like you're making it up either. Even with the UFO ET regression, it wasn't a memory, but it wasn't imagination. It's something else. It's some other level of mind. So anyway, I did this regression and I was brought back and I did find myself in Poland and the Nazis marched in and they took my family and I ended up in a concentration camp, which was not a picnic. I still have memories of eating wood chips to survive, and so it was, and I think that trauma informed a lot of my life here. And but there was a moment, and I'll just fast track the whole thing, where I remembered being in the gas chambers and not dying in the gas chambers, but I knew if I got down near the door where the air was, I would be able to breathe. But after that, they throw all those bodies on those big piles, those awful things. So anyone who says that never happened is denying Holocausts are still happening, which is awful. Sure. Around the world. So, but anyway, I this is just what came to me, and I consciously left that lifetime, and I consciously came into this lifetime with a level of awareness.
Yeah,
of knowing. And so that was an awful experience, but it gave me a level of awareness in this life, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. No, it's beautiful. I think your journey is just inspirational because it's like gives other people the confidence to go and look at your work, right? Like your life's work, all the videos, 30 years worth of these conversations. I mean, that's no small feat, my friend.
No, but what else are we going to do? What else would I mean, what did I want to sit behind a desk and be an accountant or
what'd you major in? You major in psychology?
I major in psychology, but when I first started taking psychology, I said, this is statistics. I need to look at all these and so I took one literature course. And I said, wow, these guys know more about human behavior than any psychologist. So I really became an English major and studied James Joyce for a year and got into stream of consciousness, the Joycean understanding, and looked at he wasn't quite metaphysical, Joyce. I mean, on some level, yes, but he was a master of understanding consciousness and the stream of and the flow of consciousness. So that was a kind of door opening, but I don't know. I never was good at reading in elementary school. So I stayed away from literature until actually in high school, I read The Scarlet Letter, and it's a very dense book, but it's like, wow, this is so multifaceted. There's so many points of view here. And it was really one of the first American classics. So I thought literature was just about reading, but it was really about learning and understanding people. And so I did sort of switch from psychology to literature, and also looked at film and non-narrative film. Like, oh, these films don't have any stories. What are they trying to say then?
Sure.
So there's that whole non-narrative approach to filmmaking where it's more like poetry, and it kind of just changes your sensibility a little bit, and makes you more like avant-garde. So we're not telling the same old story, which is like exactly what I talk about in this book. We need a new story, Trey. We need to tell a different experience of who we are on this planet.
A new
And
paradigm shift. We need something, man. Like,
well,
seriously.
we're getting it. That's what the UFOs, ETs, whatever they are. And I just did an interview with Grant Cameron. You know who he is?
Mm-mm.
He says, well, he's one of a UFO historian. He says, they might not be aliens. We may be talking about something that we're only calling aliens because that's the only way we could identify it. There may be this phenomena that's way beyond our comprehension that we can't even call ETs. There's something else going on. And that's the drive we are pushing to discover. And when we discover that, we discover more of ourselves because we realize we are part of that. We are not separate from the cosmos. Life is not an anomaly here on planet Earth. And this is just my belief. It's an abundant, emergent property of creation. It's emergent. It is. It's like means that it forms out of the ether somehow. Let's not use the God word or anything like that. It just is. It just is everywhere. It grows in the cracks between the sidewalk, life, abundance, everything. And so why would this planet be some strange anomaly? Why? This is not a lifeless universe. This is the change in paradigm. And so once science realizes that life is emergent, like the DNA. Actually, there's a study by Gary Nolan from, I think, the University of Las Vegas. He says DNA is older than the planet Earth. DNA is 10.5 billion years old. The Earth is only 4.5 billion years old. How do you figure that out?
Yeah.
So maybe life
stuff.
came from someplace else, right?
Maybe yeah. Transplanted here.
Right. So, I mean, what do you want to know? What is your search?
My search, I don't want to believe anymore. I want to know, right? Like I want to.
Well, what do you know? You know something, right?
Well, I know that. I know that I hear a voice that is, when I get down and meditate and I'm quiet, right? Like I know that I can connect with a source or connect with something that is outside of myself. That it's not my ego talking to me. It's not coming from this vehicle.
Yeah.
I want to know that, right? Because
that is you. That is the you that you really are. Listen to that voice if you feel like a pure resonance. And because the personality, the insecurities, whatever it is that we're all working through in this drama, human drama, that is not us. That is the persona. That's the mask. That voice that you're hearing, that is the deep essence of your soul. We can call it that. And that's the only thing worth knowing here in the incarnational field.
Man, that's powerful. I just think that it's just like the human, the human experience here, right? The ego, just living in that ego mind, and then like the awakening, like what is it next when you awaken? What is it? And like Ram Dass was like, everyone don't try to escape it. Try to, be here now, right?
Yeah.
Be here with it, and don't, take the curriculum. And that's what I'm doing. I'm taking the curriculum. But Alan, it's hard, buddy. It's hard.
Wait, what? I don't understand. What's the hard part?
The hard part is like, because you want to be here now, you want to be in every moment, but the ego, right? Like when you're doing things, when you're always going to have small goals or ambitions, and you're
right.
in the
There's
West.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. But then, in the West, you get caught up, you just get caught up in the everyday journey of trying to reach these things that you want, because you tell yourself that, let's say Trey Downs wants to be, that new voice for a younger generation, and be at a certain level with a podcast and a message that leads to different things. For me, I want to. Andrew Harvey, do you know him?
Yeah, I like Andrew. He's quite
The one thing that I've taken from he's quite a character. The one thing I've taken from him is like his sacred activism, right? And the one thing that breaks my heart is like children suffering. Like I have 3 kids, and the one thing I want to give more back to that. And it's not just I'm not just talking about donating or starting a nonprofit, but I want to do something monumental in this world that we live in. You know, whether it's helping foreign countries that are underprivileged with clean water, I want to do something huge. I could probably make a dent in that now, just where I'm at in my life, but I want to do something more. I want to do something monumental. And it's hard because when you want to do something that big, that big of a, that grand scale, there is a part of the ego that keeps dropping back in and making these goals and making you kind of forget about your, your true self. Right. And that's what I'm talking about, how it's so hard.
No, I think you know what you want to do. You want to make a difference and you want to come from your heart. But when you talked about, that was a real moment when you talked about these kids and it breaking your heart. And what is it about them that breaks your heart? What are you feeling?
So I just feel, I just feel pain, like, because like, Alan,
Just
like,
feel the
so,
pain.
yeah,
I'm just curious. If
no,
you
but
just,
like,
when
so
you,
I'll give you an example, right?
Yeah.
So I work in DC and I take the train into Baltimore home, and then sometimes I get home late. There's a couple nights that I come home, it's like 10 p.m. I'm driving through the city of Baltimore, and let's face it, I mean, Baltimore is, it's a city you love, and it's a city that has problems, right? Like every city. But I'm driving home through the city, and I'm seeing like 4-year-olds at like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, sitting on the side of the street, just sitting there hanging out, like 4-year-olds. Like, I have kids the same age. They've been in bed for 3 or 4 hours, and it breaks my heart to see that, because I get it, they're here and they're here to experience that, but it's like, at the same sense, as a father, as a human being, seeing someone like that, like, I don't know what suffering they're doing. Like, that's a 4-year-old kid, like,
well,
I don't know if
maybe
that
that's
resonates
your
with you.
mission to, I mean, if you want to help those kids that are suffering, I mean, and maybe that's your real destiny. Maybe that's how you can make a difference, because that's where you resonate with, and you're a
Yeah.
compassionate person. So
Yeah.
that's a great thing to achieve. Forget about, radio, whatever that is. If you can make a difference in those kids' lives for whatever reason, there's nothing better than that.
Sure. No, you're absolutely right. It's just, again, it's the ego, right? The ego says, all right, let's go this way. And then it's like the soul pulls you back and says, hey, buddy, take it easy.
Where does your ego want to go?
The ego wants to go everywhere, Alan. Like, the ego wants to go big, go big or go home. I want to be the next Joe Rogan of, like,
Well, Joe
spiritual
Rogan
awareness.
is great. But
You know
what
I mean?
makes Joe Rogan great, in my opinion, is that he's really honest.
Yeah.
He really is, and he's really present with people, and he talks and questions everything, and he says, I don't feel that way, or, it's like, get out of here, or something, where Tom DeLonge walked off the set. It's like, but, Joe, from what I don't know him, but he just seems he seems present. And the more present you are, and the more you're feeling, and, he's a very instinctual guy, Joe, and he's just there. That's all you have to do.
Sure.
It's not an ego thing, or not an ego thing. You're just present, talking about your feelings, and you're looking at, just in the show, I can see you kind of look at all the things that you've put in your own way,
Sure.
and they don't need to be there, because they're just patterns of thinking. They're not real. It's like that saying by Mark Twain, all the problems I thought I had in my life never happened. So it's like, it's just our mind creating the illusion of less than, or you're already there, when you can drop in and just feel yourself, and just feel what your passion is, and what breaks your heart. That's a very honest way of just being, by talking about just that story. You're seeing these kids on the street, and you're just feeling like you just wish you could do something for them.
I just want to pick them up and hug them. You know what I
And
mean? Just be like, I love you. Like, I don't care if nobody's told you today, I love you. Like, that's all I want to do.
But that is something Joe Rogan doesn't have. You have that love, And and maybe that's your work in the world. Maybe it's not even being on the air. Maybe it's communicating the love, because so many people need that. If you can offer somebody that, then you've changed their life, because maybe no one's ever held them or told them they were loved, and if you can drop into that space and be that person all the time, then that's the best life I think anyone can have.
Absolutely.
If that's your destiny. So why not?
Why not?
do that?
I mean, I'm it's just, just figuring this thing out. Not even figuring that out. It's just, you should just see my board over here of just, uh, the Bhagavad Gita quotes, just everything, like just kind of, like you said, in my own way, kind of like I need to trust that voice more and just get out of my own way.
That voice is you. Don't trust the voice of the ego that says, "Oh, we want to be big. We want to be like Joe Rogan." I mean, it'll happen or it won't happen, but that doesn't matter about who you are.
Yeah.
Your destiny is different than anyone else's. Sure. It is part of those quotes in that board, though. That is your essence. That's what you resonate with. So every time the ego comes up, say, okay, we're not going to look at that. We're just going to resonate. We're not going to think about how big or important or this.
But another thing too is I want to be like the example of like co-creation, right? Like I want to be able to manipulate or change my reality, right? I'm a blue collar guy. Like I have my career, it's blue collar. I'm not gonna get into that, but it's like I'm here doing this thing on the side because I'm passionate about this work, having conversations like with yourself and everyone else has been on the show, and expressing my energy and my vibration out to the world, because I'm putting it with the collective consciousness, right, and studying and following my curiosity. But I also want to be like, Trey Downs was the person that said that he was going to change his reality, and he worked with the higher source, with his higher self, and he was able to do that and make it the way that he wanted, and he helped a lot of people in the process. Well, that's what I want.
Well, wait, you're doing it. Hello. You are. You don't have to want it. If you're doing it, you're doing it. Why get out of the way? Everything you just said you want.
To you, Alan. I love talking to you.
No, but it's true. I'm just reflecting what you're saying. You are doing it. It's not about wanting to do it. It's like, you're driving a great car and you're saying, I want a great car. It's like, hello. So just be present with give yourself that little piece. You say, I want to do this and I'm actually doing it. It's like if you give yourself the satisfaction of having accomplished that, it gives you more room, because then you're not chasing that level of the dream. It gives room for the bigger picture of the dream to come. So give yourself what you already have. It's just take it.
I love this. Alan coming in here and just take it over. I love it.
No, but I am just reflecting on what you're saying. And that's, for me, this is always my interest, to try to understand people and try to, I'm just talking to myself over there. I really am. It's like, I know exactly, well, maybe not exactly what you're saying, but I can relate to it because I've been there. I'm still there in some level. I want this, I want that. And it's like,
well, what do you want now? Like, what is it that you want?
Well, I do want to write this second book about abduction. I would like to make this into some film work. I think, I like writing and it's fun, but I like the visual medium better. I mean, I'll send you a short movie. I did a little spiritual comedy, but I do like film, and I do like painting with emotion, which is like really great films. They take you into different directions and they make you feel things that you might not have felt before. So doing or directing or being part of a big project that I have in mind, like a mini series. I mean, everybody wants that, but I do have something worked out that could be exciting. I mean, I could say I want to travel, but I've traveled pretty much around the world. So maybe like you have a wife and kids, right? Maybe that's something I want now. I have that yet. So that would be sort of something that's the unknown for me. So you have stuff that I don't have, that it's like, I admire that part of you. So
Alan, I could talk to you like all night, man. Like we got to stay in touch, because seriously, like this has been one of the better conversations for sure.
Well, I appreciate you revealing yourself. You're dropping into the vulnerability because I think, you do this. If you do this all the time, your audience wants to know more of who you are. They want to feel you. They want to feel your pain in a way. And you shared some of that pain because when you can feel someone's, heart, you feel like you're closer to them. And I think, I don't know if you do that on every show, but this show, I feel you've revealed a part of yourself that makes you more human. It's like, we're not just talking questions and answers and it's like, I'm feeling your pain there and everything you want and all your but all the beauty and all the human parts, all the humanitarian parts. That's like, these are the conversations we all have to have. Forget about aliens or UFOs or anything. All that is to make us more human. This is, to make us more compassionate, to make the world a better, friendlier, peaceful place. This is what the ETs are waiting for us to wake up to, like the oneness, to see humanness in everyone without demonizing this political party or that political party. It's like, if you I don't know who said it, but if you demonize somebody, it's easier to make them less than human. And everyone, I feel, has the same needs and desires. This is what Marshall Rosenberg talks about in what's called nonviolent communication. Everyone has the same needs and wants. They just have different strategies for achieving that.
Oh, I love that.
It's the strategies that mess us up,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How can people find more about you? How can they find to watch your show?
Well, first I want to tell people to buy my book because it's been doing very well on Amazon, but I want to get this book out to everyone because this is like it's a summary of the whole UFO situation. And like I said, it's as much about being human as it is about whoever's visiting us. And so go to Amazon, put Making Contact, Alan Steinfeld. You can find my book there. And this is not just my contribution. It's 10 of the best UFO researchers in the field. People like Linda Moulton Howe, Whitley Strieber, John Mack, Grant Cameron, Nick Pope. These are people who are on the news. Every time there's a sighting, Nick Pope goes on CNN and says, oh yeah, I know what it is. So they lay the groundwork for what's coming out, what the government wants to tell us, what they don't want to tell us. And part of what they've hesitated to tell us, the government, with this whole disclosure thing coming out, is they don't know what's going on. That's the truth. I really think they can't figure this thing out. They don't know how to tell us they can't figure this out. And it will make them look silly, say, well, there's something out there, but we don't know what it is. So why are we giving billions of dollars for a military who can't even figure out what's in our skies? So it has a lot of ramifications, this phenomenon, but it does ultimately wake us up to a better, more peaceful planet. These ETs are not here to invade. If they would have invaded us, they would have done it a long time ago. So we're here to wake up. And they're waking us up. So I do a YouTube channel like 3 or 4 times a week. That's youtube.com/New Realities. New Realities is sort of my brand, which is all about cognition, awakening, possibilities, the unknown. My email is newrealities@earthlink.net. But read the book, look at my YouTube channel. My website should be back up, newrealities.com, which was in reconstruction for a while. So that's one thing I want to achieve, a good website, So
yeah. Me too.
All right. We all do. You can always have a better website, a better apartment, a better job or something.
Absolutely.
But no, it's been really fun. I appreciate, you dropping in with me.
Yeah, man. I'm sitting here hanging out with on a soul level, giving a little heart action.
Exactly. Wouldn't that be great for every show? What are your other shows like?
I'm like this. I mean, I don't ever have a lot of my guests are like authors or psychics or mediums or channelers or whatever. So I don't get the banter back as much. So I can appreciate that. Like when I have you come on here and you're used to this. You've done this for a long, long time. Right. So you talking to me, giving it back to me. Like I appreciate that. Like I'm serious. I really do, because it makes me vulnerable. It makes a better show because I can go there and bring you where I'm at.
Exactly. It makes a great show when we both drop in. I mean, I think you dropped into a more of a deeper place than I did, actually, because I'm just talking about the book and all that. But
Well, you're good. You're good at what you do.
Well, I'm always curious, like where people I see that you are a really sincere guy. You have a good heart, and you just have ideas that no longer serve you about who you're
Sure.
supposed to be, and you don't need to have them anymore. They're old, and something new is coming to you as soon as like you step out of the old suit and realize that a lot of what you wanted to accomplish is you've done. And like what's next for you? What maybe it is off opening an orphanage and taking those kids off the street. I don't know, but
Mhm.
whatever is your excitement is your destiny. So
I love
this
that.
is, well, it's true. It's
I
how
love
could
it.
it not be true? This is what we're here to do.
Alan, thank you so much for joining the show. This has
Yeah.
been a fabulous conversation. This is a powerful conversation, and I can't wait to release this out to the world.
Thank you. Where will we see this on? Where will
Everywhere. So,
Okay.
when I publish it, it's going to be everywhere.
Like
the
what's
entire
everywhere?
world.
It's like YouTube. Where is it? Like on
YouTube. It's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on Apple Podcasts,
Okay.
Spotify, all the platforms. So it's I'll get you hooked up. I'll send you some
Great.
some art and a
Yeah.
link.
What's that? What's the name of the show again? You saying?
Your Superior Self.
Oh, right. That's why we've been talking about that. Of course. This is what you want to know. This is your destiny.
This is
That's
my destiny.
that
Alan
is a big-
Steinfeld coming on the show, crushing it. New realities. Check him out. Great dude.
Thanks, Trey.